Limit your comments to 3 minutes. There being no one, we're going to close public comments. Item number 3, consent agenda. This evening we have the minutes from the April 19th, 2023 mid-month meeting. Minutes for May 3rd, 2020.
Being here this evening. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Beverlee Davis as our new Public Safety Office Administrator. Beverlee moved to the Outer Banks from Roanoke, Virginia with her husband. Beverlee comes to public safety with a wealth of administrative experience and knowledge, which she's immediately put to use when she got here. In fact, the Deputy Chief and I can't find anything because the organization is next world. So we love that. Beverlee comes in every day with a smile and a kind word, and her position, she's already had a great impact on all the firefighters, police officers, and town staff, and we know that we've absolutely chosen the perfect person to join our team. So I'm really happy to introduce Beverlee. Great things to come.
Welcome aboard, Beverlee. Jeff, I think you're going to handle B, swearing in of Timothy Armstrong as Tuck Police Department's newest sergeant.
All right. I want to welcome a familiar face up to the podium here with me by my side, along with his girlfriend, Nags Head Police Officer Kana Hashigami. Master Officer Tim Armstrong grew up in Terrell County and began his law enforcement career in 2008 when he became a police officer with the Winterville Police Department outside of Greenville. After serving there for 4 years, Tim accepted a position with the Nags Head Police Department, where he worked until 2018, which is when we convinced him that things were much better on the north end of the county and got him to come over and join our team. Tim holds an associate's degree in criminal justice and his advanced law enforcement certificate. Tim is no stranger to anybody in our community. He's an excellent police officer. He takes great pride in everything that he does. He loves his work. He loves his community. He embodies the values of service, ownership, accountability, and respect. And Tim also has extensive training resume and has served in a number of special units and divisions during his career. Over the past 5 years, I've really gotten to know Tim well. I've seen him rise from police officer to master police officer, the entirety of our career development program. The one thing that Tim shows and has always shown is that being given a rank or a title does not make you a leader. What does is experience, passion, and a willingness to lead from the line, lead from the bottom, and that's something that Tim does every single day, has done that every day, and demonstrates all the best qualities. So when a sergeant's position came available, it was a really easy decision for me and an easy sell to convince the town manager. I don't think there was any convincing needed. But it is my great honor to promote Master Police Officer Tim Armstrong to the rank of Sergeant. And we'll have Kana poke Tim with his sergeant's badge. Oh, we got to swear him in first. I'm sorry. There's one more step.
Small step.
The town clerk will now swear him in first. Then we'll give him a badge. And I'll move over here.
Raise your right hand, and after I give the oath, say I do or I swear. I, Timothy M. Armstrong, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the governance thereof, that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, that I will be alert and vigilant to enforce the criminal laws of this state, that I will not be influenced in any manner on account of personal bias or prejudice, and that I will faithfully and impartially execute the duties of my office as police sergeant with the Duck Police Department according to the best of my skills, abilities, and judgment. So help me God.
Now.
Can you just get him to sign?
Yes.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. This is wonderful.
No, not tonight. Maybe later.
Tim is a man of few words sometimes.
I don't know what the date was.
Thank you. Okay, we'll fix it.
Okay.
Hang out a while, Eddie,
Thanks, guys.
The next item is employee service recognition. Several years ago, the town council put a program in place to recognize our employers at interviews of 5 years. And with that, they get a certificate and a gift certificate from a business in Duck. So tonight we have two. I'm going to start with the 5-year, and I'm going to ask Kay Nickens if she'll come up here.
Wow,
And Drew Haven.
that's gone fast. 25 years? Where have I been for the last 5 years?
Kay is being recognized for 5 years. She came with us in 2017, was our deputy town clerk, and is now our public information officer. And with that, I'm very pleased to recognize her 5 years with us. Congratulations.
I was the 7th employee.
Okay. 7th employee. I remember him when he was on patrol and came up through the ranks of the Town of Duck Police, now our esteemed Chief of Police. And I'd like to congratulate Chief Eckerman on his 20 years of service with the Town of Duck.
I don't know what to say. Usually I'm not at a loss for words, but I love this town. I love our community. I love our police officers. I love everything that the council and our community has allowed us to become in 20 years. So it's been a great ride, and I'm not done yet. Congratulations.
And the next special presentation will be by Ken Willson of CPE on our RCCP Phase 2 update. Welcome, Ken. Good to see you.
Thanks. Good to be up here. Although I think I've been up here in February and January where the weather was a little prettier than it is today. Got the smoke clouds out there today.
Yeah, I brought the smoke with us.
All right. Just got a couple of slides up there. Today, actually, the topic of conversation is only a very small part of it. We'll actually talk about beaches, which is usually what I'm up here to talk about. But yeah, we had the pleasure of working on this project with the town staff. It was a really fun project to be part of. And so tonight is kind of the culmination of the last few months of working on this Phase 2 update. And I think you've got an item after this to go ahead and formally adopt that. And so I'm just going to briefly give you a little bit of background. I know you guys deal with a lot of different issues, but the RCCP program is a program that was started 3 or 4 years ago. The Division of Coastal Management, the State Division of Coastal Management, received some funding to be able to implement this process, this procedure, and it's basically looking to provide funding and technical assistance to local governments for the development of resilience strategies. That includes risk and vulnerability assessments, develop portfolios of prioritized resilience projects, and then ultimately to start the implementation of these resilience projects through the engineering and design and ultimately the construction. And so one of the key factors of this RCCP program is to promote locally driven, inclusive and forward-thinking approaches to traditional hazard mitigation planning. The more we get involved with these resilience strategies, the more you realize how tailored they are to every single community. Every community is different. Everybody's priorities are a little bit different. And so the Division of Coastal Management understood that when they developed this plan and really pushed forward that idea of promoting locally driven hazard mitigation planning. And then obviously, they're also looking to incentivize innovative solutions. So we hear a lot about green infrastructure, natural and nature-based infrastructure. And so there is a slant towards trying to promote more of that. They thought so much of the program that they developed this program handbook, the Division of Coastal Management did. Again, it facilitates that community-driven process and just walks you through the process of setting these goals and walking through really phase 1 and phase 2 of the program. So speaking of phase 1 and phase 2, they've got 4 different phases of this program. The community engagement phase, the risk and vulnerability assessment, they call that phase 1. And then phase 2 gets into this idea of planning and project development so that ultimately when you come out of this phase 2, you've got basically, more or less shovel-ready projects or at least concepts on the shelf that as funding becomes available, you can shop these different programs around. So that was really the goal of that first contract, to get through that phase 1 and phase 2. And then phase 3 is the engineering and design. Phase 4 gets into actual construction. And this is just a graphic that kind of shows out, it gives you a little bit more perspective about how the town of Duck is facilitating this process. So all the way back in 2020, 2021, that's when the first round of funding for these communities came out for the phase 1 and 2. Duck was awarded their funding in March of 2021. They started that shortly after phase 1 and 2. They had some public meetings back in the spring of 2022, and they were able to complete the Duck Resilience Strategy in June 2022. So that took you all through phase 1 and phase 2, and you've actually adopted that phase 1 and phase 2 last summer about this time. Moving forward, about that time, the notice of the 2022 Phase 3 award. So basically the state said that, hey, we have funding available to move you into Phase 3. The town did apply for that funding in July 2022. They were awarded that funding, and basically they used that funding to work through the neighborhood flooding study, if you all are familiar with that. And so they've done the engineering and design with that. That was all finished up a couple of months ago. And now the state has opened up for the first time these Phase 4 grants for implementation. And I believe the town submitted an application for that same project, the implementation of that through the Phase 4. All right, so that's kind of how those four phases go through. One of the big focuses of that phase 1 and phase 2 was to set some goals for the Duck Resiliency Strategy. So you all have a number of existing plans in place, the land use plan, the hazard mitigation plan, and so obviously we wanted to reflect a lot of those goals in those plans as well. The resilience strategy that was completed last June did take up several or stressed several additional goals. Those are probably familiar as they're kind of reflective in some of your other plans, but those are up there. Preserve our community's unique lifestyle, protect critical natural resources and coastal ecosystems, build and promote sustainable economy that supports residents and visitors, plan for orderly and sustainable growth and redevelopment, and then maintain a well-run and efficient government that provides high quality and cost-effective services. Okay, so I mentioned that phase 1 and phase 2 was completed last June, and just again that this study was completed back in June. Why am I up here talking today? Well, after the study was originally adopted, the original project portfolio, that phase 2, it really only included about 5 projects, and the descriptions of those projects were fairly general with the information that was available at the time. And when the Division of Coastal Management reviewed that, they commented that because you only have so many projects included, and because the descriptions are sort of general, that could present some hurdles in project implementation and the ability for you all to secure funding through various grant grant opportunities in the future. And so the town and the North Carolina Division of Coastal Management negotiated, partnered to update those project portfolios. And so that was what we were brought on board to do. Not necessarily redo any of the phase one work, but really try to dig in a little deeper and put some meat on the bone of this project portfolio. And so what we did was we expanded the number of initiatives that will meet the goals of this resilience strategy, developed a greater level of detail for each of those projects identified, and reprioritized the project portfolio. And so how that looked, basically in that handbook I talked about, it's required that you establish this community action team. We use the same community action team, which was essentially mostly driven by staff that was used for the first go-round. We had initial scoping meetings, our firm, as well as town staff that made up the CAT back in November and December, just before the holiday season. And then we started working on the development of these various projects. Now, for this second go-round, we divided the projects up into non-structural and structural. So think of non-structural as these are sort of planning documents or policy documents or studies that need to be conducted before you could move into engineering design, versus structural projects are projects that there's already an established need for these projects, and you could move right into the design and the permitting of those types of projects. So structural would be more like building something. Non-structural would be more like planning documents and studies. Okay, so for each one of these 15 different projects, non-structural and structural, we developed detailed project descriptions, costs, hazards addressed, estimates of cost and timelines to complete those, potential funding sources. If possible, we developed location maps for those, and then we worked on prioritizing measures as well. So what those look like, and I'm not going to walk through all 15 of them. I will show you a list at the end to kind of show you what those look like. But in the final document that we provided, which is basically an addendum to the report you all adopted last June, it will replace the phase 2 section of the report, the project priorities. Each project has its own kind of fly sheet like this, where you get a project description, you've got a little location map, and then each of those different aspects that I talked about previously. And at the bottom in red, we've got the prioritization ranking as well. And so once we developed those 15 projects, we did go through the process of having an environmental resiliency open house back in April. I know some of the council members were there. Councilmember Thibodeau and Whitman were there for that. Produced a flyer, went through in great detail each of those different measures. And then after that, we opened up a public engagement survey that was open for about 5 weeks. So from April 12th to May 22nd, we received about 31 additional public comments, really looking at trying to prioritize these new 15 different aspects. And so shortly after that, we were able to finalize the report. The CAT team and our group worked on that final list. And so here we have the final expanded list of projects. Again, those non-structural projects on the left-hand side, those would be your planning documents, your studies. The projects on the right-hand side are more like moving forward and actually building something, shovels in the ground and so forth. So this is really my last slide. I'm happy to take any questions. I know the documents have been distributed as well, but basically you've got one of those fly sheets in that document for each one of those, and then a description of the process we just went through. Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, these are in order of priority.
That's correct. Those numbers are the final orders of priority that we ended up with. And we've also got the priorities don't always perfectly line up with the surveys. I mean, we did get 31 respondents, but that's not necessarily, reflective of everybody in the town. But the results of those surveys are also included in that document as an addendum, so you can see those results.
Not only that, but I'll just add that this doesn't mean that we need to do project number 1 first. Okay, it just means that there's a number, depending on funding opportunities and things like that. We may do project number 4 before we do number 1 even. depending on opportunities and depending on the desires of town council and in terms of what you're hearing from the public.
It's helpful. It's nice to see such a succinct list like this, but know that there's a lot of meat behind it.
Correct.
How often will you do project status updates on these?
I think one of those planning goals is sort of to establish that resilience review team. So I think that was part of that.
And I would anticipate this will be something very logical to do during the annual retreat and providing an annual report. But if council wanted as a separate item, we could do that at a different time of year if you wish. But otherwise, I would imagine we would cover that during the retreat.
Well, I think we've already done one of those. We've got number 7 done, and that was the lowest one. I mean, I think that speaks to opportunity and funds. So I understand that we might pop in and out of those. But I do think when we're reviewing them, we should always try and keep in mind the priority order that we have, because otherwise you always just pick off the easiest one to do, and it's not the most important. So I just caution us that we don't do that. But I do understand that there will be opportunities and funding that may cause us to jump to 4 before 1 or whatever.
This is helpful.
All right. Great.
Thank you, Ken.
Sure. Thank you.
Going on to item number 5, quasi-judicial public hearings, we have none at this time. Number 6, legislative public hearings, we have none at this time. Item number 7, old business items deferred from previous meetings. The first is going to be the discussion consideration of Resolution 23-08, a resolution accepting the findings of the Town of Duck Resilience Strategy Report and the prioritized project portfolio contained therein. Joe, are you handling that?
Handled it. There's nothing more, there's literally nothing more to say. And Ken has done a great job of outlining what you're being asked to adopt.
Councilor, are there any questions on the ordinance 23-08 in our package?
None.
No. There being none, I'll entertain a motion to accept it.
I make a motion we adopt Resolution 23-08, a resolution accepting the findings of the Town of Duck Resiliency Strategy Report and prioritized project portfolio contained therein.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next item is going to be discussion consideration of appointing 7 individuals to serve on the Board of Adjustments. The way this is going to work this evening is the council will basically appoint 5 people to as members of the Board of Adjustments and 2 alternates to serve if needed. We do have 9 candidates. We will do individual nominations one at a time. The first 5 that are nominated and accepted by council will become members of the Board of Adjustments. The next 2 that are nominated and accepted by council will become the alternates to the Board of Adjustments. These are for 2-year terms, and the whole Board of Adjustments is up. We do have 4 incumbents, and I'd like to ask the town attorney if he has any other comments he'd like to make on the voting procedure.
Thank you, Mayor. I think what we are suggesting is that there be 7 elections or 7 votes essentially by council for the 7 positions, the 5 full members and the 2 alternates. So basically when we start the process, it will be for position number 1 on the Board of Adjustment as a full member. So there can be as many nominations as you want, but keep in mind that there's still going to be, 4 more full positions in the next go-around and 2 more after that. So even if you nominate somebody and that person is not appointed by the most number of votes, that person can still be nominated for the next position, and then so on and so forth until you've finished appointing basically 7 persons for these positions. Does that make sense?
I'm going to ask the town attorney and the town manager if they'll keep track of the votes. And before we start, it was not a prerequisite that you had to be here this evening, but if you are here, I'm going to call your name. No presentations, but you just stand so people will recognize you. Starting with the current chairman, Olin Finch. Incumbent Carol Powell. Incumbent Ed Sadler. Incumbent David Flowers. Kevin Lagarde. Bob Webb. Matthew Price. Sajeev Jaraith. Tim McKeithen. Tim just had a knee operation. I don't know if quite. Stand, thank you. At this point in time, I'm going to open up nominations for the first position. I'd like to start by nominating Olin Finch. And with that, we'll move up and down the table here and see if there's any other nominations.
So to be clear, we're nominating
Position number 1.
just for position number 1?
Yeah, we're gonna do 5 votes for the members of the board and then 2 for alternates. So we're gonna do individually, basically 7 nominations and votes.
Okay, so we're going to nominate first and then vote next.
Right, for just position number 1.
Right.
So there can be even 1 nomination, or it can be 4 nominations for position number 1.
So this is just for position number 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay,
I have
understand.
another nomination for
And
that.
as we appoint people, they come off the list, obviously.
Right.
So I'm placing in nomination Olin Finch. Monica, do you have any votes?
Not for position number 1.
Andy?
Olin Finch.
All right, so basically we're gonna vote on that. We have 1 nominee, Olin Finch. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Olin is reappointed to the Board of Adjustments. I'd like to place a second person in nomination, Carol Powell, who's an incumbent.
I'll agree with that nomination.
Andy?
Carol, please. I agree.
We'll do another vote. All in favor of Carol policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Carol. I'd like to make a nomination for item person number 3, Ed Sadler.
I agree with Ed for position number 3.
Agree.
All right, we'll do a vote again. All in favor of Ed Sadler, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Ed. I'd like to place the 4th person, David Flowers, also an incumbent. Monica?
Yes, I agree.
Yes. Concur.
We'll do a quick vote. All in favor of David Flowers, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, David. For the 5th position, I'd like to put Kevin Lagarde in nomination.
I would also agree with Kevin Lagarde.
Agree.
Quick vote on Kevin. All in favor of Kevin, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Kevin. We have now basically named the 5 members of the Board of Adjustments for the next 2 years. The next 2 selected will be the alternates. And I'd like to place in nomination former planning board member Tim McKeithen.
I would agree with Tim McKeithen.
Agreed.
Let's do a vote on Tim McKeithen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Tim, congratulations. Thank you for coming out tonight with your knee operation. And for the 7th position, I'd like to put in nomination Bob Webb. Monica?
I'd like to nominate Matthew Price.
Andy?
Sanjeev Jareth.
All right, we're going to do a vote on this one. We've got 3 nominees, Bob Webb, Matthew Price, and Shajeev. All in favor of Bob Webb, please raise their hand. That's 2. In favor of Matthew Price? 1. Sajeev?
And under your procedure, it's the most number of votes, even if it's not a majority. So Webb, my count would be Webb would be appointed to your second alternate position.
All right. So congratulations, everyone, and thank you for those that have applied. And there'll be more openings, I guarantee you, as we move through time. Item number C, discussion consideration of proposed full year 2024 budget. Drew? Before you start, Drew, a question for the town clerk. Do you need to swear them in? Or do you swear them in July 1? At their meeting. All right. The next meeting, or? Because. All right.
Let's come. Mr. Mayor, members of council, we've been moving along quite smartly tonight, and I'll see if I can end that trend right here, talk about the budget. I will not spend a whole lot of time actually talking about this, mainly because, council, you spent quite a long time at your mid-month meeting in April going through some of the finer details of the budget, and then we came back to you last month at your public hearing and presented a summary of that. I will say that the budget has been out on our website, and it's been available publicly since April, and we've received no public comment whatsoever. The budget is balanced at just a little over $14 million. The big highlight is no increase in the real estate tax rate. So there's no tax rate increase in this budget. You have this in front of you in your agenda packets, but as far as the revenues, I'm not going to go through this again. So you'll see the pie chart. Our ad valorem and MSD taxes make up about a third of our budget. Occupancy tax 14% and sales tax 13%. So we have a lot of revenue coming from those sources, and then on this. In this particular fiscal year, grant revenue anticipated is about 20%, and that's largely the BRIC grant and the other associated grants to fund the Highway 12 elevation project. So next year, as I said in May, next year when we look at this pie chart, it's going to look a little different because the grant revenue will not be quite as high. Expenditures by department, again, this is just to show you graphically where the money goes. Police and fire represent about 28% of your total proposed budget. Those are as big as they are as a proportion of the budget, mainly because of the number of personnel, with 14 people in each one of those departments. That helps drive expenditures in those. And then streets and highways, 23%. Again, that's the BRIC project. Next year, that will not be such a large portion. Just some highlights on the personnel side. So as we talked about in April and again at the public hearing, our personnel policy says we adjust our pay scales by the Consumer Price Index, so that's a 7.1% increase in the pay scales. That doesn't move anybody, that just moves our pay scales. But what we've proposed in this budget is an 8.5% increase in the salaries of all of our personnel, with the exception of the manager, on July 1, and that's a market rate increase to try to make us a little more competitive in this local employment market, which is extremely competitive, extremely tight. This proposed budget sets the merit increase pool to 6% of base salaries, implements a tuition assistance program, and we'll be talking about that in the next agenda item this evening, and then reclassifies the position of police lieutenant to police deputy chief or deputy chief of police. And there's that's a that's just a title change primarily. There's no salary impact there. And then promoting 2 master police officers to police corporals. So we're actually creating 2 corporal positions in the police department and promoting from within, and that's about an $8,300 change in the budget. No increase at all in the total number of full-time employees contemplated in this budget. It's held the same since fiscal '22. I'm not going to go through. You have this, and we talked about this for the public that's viewing here. Just a list of some of our more significant capital projects and outlays that will be coming up in the fiscal '24 budget, and then some operationals. And we don't show all of the operational expenses. These are just some of the one-offs and some of the highlights, just to show where the money is being spent. And then you can see that the dollar bill just slices it up a little bit differently than the pie chart. This is just a summary again. It's about a 6.3% increase over the current year's budget. And then this chart just shows the expenditures by type and the growth since fiscal '19. The red dashed line is the total number of personnel, so you can just kind of keep an eye on that within the same graph. And so the action we're requesting tonight is any discussion you may have, and then consideration of a motion to approve the fiscal '23-24 budget ordinance and the fiscal year '24 to '28 capital improvement plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just one question for you, Drew. Do you have any knowledge, once again, about the other towns in the county? We do know about Nags Head. Just curiosity question.
So yeah, we know that Nags Head is making a tax rate increase, and the last I knew, Kildable Hills was, or at least proposing.
Kildable Hills was proposing one.
Yeah. Which will have, I mean, that does have a downstream impact on the shared revenue. So occupancy tax and sales tax that gets shared on the ad valorem basis. It's a proportion of the tax levy, which is the amount of money that we bill for taxes. So there's a downstream impact on those that we'll need to work into the following year's budget.
Yep. The impact in the following year.
Yes, sir.
The impact will be in the following year?
Correct.
That's what I thought too. I just want to make sure
That's a lagging input. Yeah.
So if they raise taxes, they get a bigger share of the shared revenue?
Yes, sir.
That doesn't sound like a good plan, does it?
Yeah. So that's one of the things we'll need to look at as we work on the next fiscal year's budgets. And that's candidly something we looked at this year too. Do we need to do a defensive tax rate increase? And we couldn't justify it. We couldn't justify recommending to the council that we increase property taxes on our taxpayers just as a defensive move, but we'll have to keep an eye on things, because really the only lever that the council has to pull in terms of adjusting revenue is that tax rate.
Right.
And it does have that trickle effect of the other, how we share our revenues, regardless of what we might bring in as a town. It's allocated on that basis, and good thing it's not allocated on population. That's always something we are happy about. And we saw that tax increase in Nags Head, and they attributed it to their public, their municipal improvements. They're doing all that big water situation, and Kildable Hills, of course, is involved in a big capital project. So if we get our fire department and the public safety building going, that would be something we could point to that we need.
Yeah, of course, we'll look for grant funding to help offset that, but I would anticipate that there will be a need for additional revenue.
Well, I think that you've done an excellent job of putting this together and educating the council and the public on this. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023-24 budget ordinance.
I make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 23-24 budget ordinance and the 24 through 28 capital improvement plan.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Drew, and thank you, staff, for all the work you put into the budget.
Yeah.
It's a very professional job.
Excellent.
Going on item number 7D, discussion consideration of personnel policy changes to allow private government services to be considered in determining vacation leave accrual, establishing a tuition assistance policy, and creation of a health insurance stipend for retired employees. Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these are 3 proposed changes that we discussed at your April mid-month meeting when we talked about the budget. So some of them have no impact on the current fiscal year's budget. The one that does is the tuition assistance program. That's included in the budget. It's about a $9,600 expenditure, so that's there. If you decide you don't want to do the tuition assistance program, that money will obviously not be spent for that purpose. So the 3 things we're talking about this evening, so changing the wording in a personnel policy regarding vacation time accrual. So currently our vacation time accrual is based on the number of years of service with the town of Duck. What we're proposing in order to be kind of ahead of some of the other towns on the Outer Banks is that we count all years of government service. So you heard, for instance, this evening, Sergeant Armstrong came to us with experience in Nags Head and Turrell County. So that service, he basically lost any time and grade, if you would, in terms to build up vacation accrual when he came here. So basically they're starting over. We have another officer that we were able to recruit from a neighboring department that had 15 plus years of service. So he had a whole lot of vacation accrual that he was getting, and when he came here, he started basically at 0 again. So what we're proposing is that we change the policy to allow this prior service, so it would be time that's spent in local and state government. And that's any local or state government position. So that's the proposal we're making. It impacts 16 of our 40 employees. And I will point out that vacation leave in excess of 240 hours. So if one accumulates over 240 hours of vacation leave in a year, at the end of the calendar year, that rolls into sick time. And so sick time is not compensable upon separation from employment. Vacation time is. So the sick time, the benefit to having a lot of sick time is that goes to your creditable service, number of years of creditable service when the calculations are done for retirement. So that's the benefit to having it go to sick time, and also the benefit to us to having it sweep so it's no more than 240 hours. We don't accrue a large liability for unpaid vacation time. So it's a total, if you look at the way this lays out, it's a total of 58 additional vacation days for these 16 employees. So that's I guess we'll just let council talk about these one at a time. The chiefs can address scheduling and how that works in their departments as far as some additional vacation time. But I'm happy to answer questions about this.
Just a question. You say state and local. How about federal employees? And then I know they're under a different system, but say you hire a park ranger or, in fact, I don't know, an IRS auditor or something along those lines. I mean, would you consider any of those positions, like someone coming into the police force or fire department, National Park Service or something? Would you, consider them or not, or totally no federal?
So the way that the draft policy is written is it's state, so it's state government and local government. So the council, if you wish to broaden that, we certainly can do that. The primary audience that we have is other local government employees. So, we're able to recruit, for instance, police officers from New Jersey, from Virginia. And they're all, basically starting over again when they come here. So as a recruitment tool for the chiefs, both police and fire, to be able to say, you've got 10 years of service or 20 years of service where you are, you can end up with a little more vacation leave here.
If we get someone from out of town, out of state, are we going to consider that also then?
Yes. Yeah, so it's any state or any local government. So I know Chief Ackerman has a couple.
And I don't know how it's consistent with the business world. I don't know how it shakes up with public employment in terms of our competitors. Would it be a little better than our other towns, or?
So by counting service in other local and state government,
Right.
would put us in rare but getting less rare company. So this is one of those it's one of those things that some of the more aggressive and progressive towns have been doing
Right.
to try to say,
Right.
or what else can we do?
Yeah.
This is one that it really doesn't touch your bottom line. The biggest touch on the bottom, or the biggest touch on operations for DUC primarily is in public safety, and they would just need to figure out how to schedule those
Cover the
those
time,
additional
yeah.
days.
I would, playing off of Don's comment, I wouldn't be opposed if we added federal service as well to that, because, like you said, we could get a federal law enforcement person who wants to come here, retire or whatever, or change lifestyles or whatever. I think that would be okay. I don't see why we wouldn't. I'm guessing that if we didn't, you'd probably end up coming before us and say, well, we've got this federal guy with 10 years, and so, I think we might as well be there. You and I talked about this, and the only kind of caveat I had, and it's not like a deal breaker, but I'm saying, like, there should be some logic to it in that it shouldn't be someone who worked 10 years in public service, then went in the business world for 30 years, now came back and wants those 10 years. It seems to me we should say as long as they come to us within a certain time frame of their last public service. I don't know, just a thought, but as I said, I don't know how anybody else feels about that.
That's a good point.
I worked for the school department for 3 summers in a row, and when I was in college, and I could come and say, well, I had public service for 3 years, and,
I can understand what you're saying on that. I'm thinking in the larger scale, though, and the spirit of the thing, the idea that we're trying to kind of welcome people, and I feel like that would be a rarity. Or if someone did, I think it would be difficult to set a limit. For example, if you were, 20 years ago, or it was only 5 years ago that you went into private business and then came back out and thought, no, this is really what I want to do. I feel like that would be a difficult line to draw, and it doesn't seem like it would be that prevalent. And the whole idea of it is to welcome people to our staff that might be qualified, and here's an extra little added thing for you.
Yeah, as I said, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'd go back to that federal, too, and maybe, Jeff, you can correct me on this, but at one point in time, we hired an officer who was a federal deposit officer in Richmond, right?
The tricky thing is not to say that we wouldn't get a federal applicant. North Carolina doesn't recognize federal law enforcement service for lateral transfer purposes.
Good for them.
Because they don't.
Good for us.
The academies really don't. They're not apples to apples. But I think you make a fair point. Somebody could retire, still be young enough to want to go to the academy, so it comes at a stronger rate.
Couldn't we not put something in there that perhaps at your discretion on things that might fall out of the policy from a standpoint of Tony's talking about, the relative service, but 30 years ago, and/or a federal position? You should have some discretionary, ability and authority on this one, I think. If you're trying to hire a good candidate.
We would need to word the discretion somewhat carefully,
Yeah, it might put the manager in an awkward position
That's what I was thinking.
if you did that. I like the wording as it is now where it talks about provided to the satisfaction of the town manager or designee. As far as the federal, if you wanted to add that, you could put a comma after the parenthesis after county, put a comma, and then just take out or, and then put after state, put or federal government. That would make it broader. If that is the wish of the council, it would be a pretty easy change. But I wouldn't recommend any other changes because it, again, the manager may not be comfortable with too much discretion on that.
I mean, I'm comfortable with it, but I'm also thinking of the long game, so this is.
I mean, if you don't need it, you don't
policy,
need it.
right?
I mean, it's okay. If you don't think you're going to need it, that's fine. Leave it out. It makes it simpler. Yeah.
Just put it under further discussion and, move with the policy the way it is now and just, futures, if in fact it becomes an issue, we can readdress it.
Right. So if I'm hearing correctly, so again, you're not being asked to adopt this tonight. We're going to bring this back with any changes. So the change I'm hearing is to include federal government service. Is that the consensus of the council to include that?
I think what we're saying is leave the federal out if you don't feel it's important, and just keep the policy as it is, and I think we could approve that.
That if it becomes an issue, bring it forward to the council.
Okay. Okay. So the next item was, and is what we're calling a retiree health insurance stipend. So you're familiar with some local governments, including, as you can see, the ones here on the beach, offer retiree health insurance. So they actually pay a portion or all of the health insurance premiums for retired employees. The issue that I have with that, and anyone that looks at my record from my prior employer will know that we did away with this when I was there, is that in this particular model that other communities are using, it ends up with a very large liability for the community that you have to carry on your balance sheet. Mainly because of the way the actuaries work, and they're trying to predict future health insurance costs, and all we know is that those are going up double digits a year as far as health insurance premiums. So what we're recommending here is a stipend. So it's a fixed amount. So we're not saying we're going to pay, even 25% of the insurance premium. We're going to say is you may stay on retirees, you may stay on the town's health insurance plan, and the town will contribute a stipend, a monthly stipend amount, the per $100 a month, so $2,400 a year for retired employees. We're saying that the retiring employee must be eligible for unreduced retirement benefits through ELGER, so that's Local Government Employee Retirement System. So the eligibility requirements there are age 65 with 5 years of creditable service for you. Out of the recesses of my mind. So we talked about it at our leadership, one of our management team meetings. It's not anywhere near all of what the insurance premium is, but again, it's just.
Okay, I see. We're not making any contributions on their behalf.
Until fiscal 28, one employee, and this is assuming that everybody retires as soon as they're eligible.
Right.
And then it shows, how much, we calculated how much time between the time they're eligible, time they turn 65. So, for instance, for me, I'm going to turn 65 right when I'm eligible to retire for unreduced benefits. So this has, I'll be going right on Medicare, assuming that's still around.
Is DUC from an insurance, health insurance,
out or
So
something.
Ms. Barnes has something to say.
It would be free.
Yes, it would.
So when somebody files under their insurance, if they file a claim, normally if they have a secondary insurance, that insurance company is going to know. They're going to deny the claim and they're going to notify the claimant, basically. So their claims won't be paid the way it would if it was single insurance, basically.
So, yeah, so,
So it may be delayed, but we would eventually
well,
find out.
yeah, so we'll catch them if they file a claim. If they don't file a claim, then yes, it is the honor system.
So they would only get the 200 if they're still on our health plan.
No, they could use it to purchase their own insurance.
I mean, how do we get a claim if in fact they're not in our insurance?
Oh, I thought the 200 was only if they were staying with us.
We can make it that way
No,
if
I
you'd
mean,
like.
You
Yeah.
would recommend just allowing them to get it and purchasing, because they might need to go onto another plan, and
They-
that
they
would
may,
be a nice.
right.
So they could either stay with us, get the 200, or just get the 200.
And they would need to show proof of coverage and what they're paying, and that it's
Yeah.
an individual plan or a separate plan that they're
I would think there would
paying
be a
for.
form that we could come up with, right? that
I'm-
they-
Yeah, and we could have them sign something that has a little bit of legal teeth, and we've got 4 years to do it.
I think we should do it just if they stay on our plan, because I'll tell you why. If they're not going to stay on our plan and take the 2,400, they must have found a deal that's better than being on our plan, so they don't need the 2,400. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like if they stay with us, we'll subsidize it. If they want to go off and do it on their own, so be it. I don't know.
I don't know, after 15 years, but at the same time, I think one of the reasons they might get on another plan would be because of a spousal situation or someone that they, is still working and now they can jump on their plan and be, I don't know.
Yeah, so they might not need $2,400.
So you're just presuming that if they don't need our plan, they don't need our 2,400?
That's what I'm saying. Otherwise, it's just an extra retirement benefit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just disguised as something else, but it's really a retirement benefit. I think if they stay on our plan because they want to, retire and not get benefits from anyone else, but they're not yet 65, we'll be helping them bridge that gap till the time they get to 65 if they want to stay with us. If they don't want to stay with us because they think they can do better elsewhere, then okay, so be it. Otherwise, it's just another form of a retirement benefit.
Yes, it is. And that's really how it's designed
And
to
after
be.
15 years, I think, why not a little bit of extra retirement benefit? I don't know.
Well, then why not make the retirement plan richer? I think we're circumventing the retirement plan and, I don't know.
I mean, what we want to avoid is strapping future councils with the liability and debt,
Yeah.
something out in future years.
Yeah, so it does peak out right now based on our current employee pool, and I think it's fiscal 44 at 38,000.
I will say that every company in the last 100 years that have made this decision never thought it was going to end up being what it is today. These things always have a way of, growing exponentially. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like that could possibly happen in Duck. But someday, 30 years from now, someone's going to say, what in the heck did that council do?
And that would be an action of the council. So the council would have to take action to say, well, that 200 really ought to be 800 a month. So, I mean, because we're not tying that stipend amount to anything. So we're not saying it'll increase by CPI. We're not saying it's going to increase as the medical insurance costs.
That'll be the next thing that happens. We'll increase it by the CPI every year. I mean, I'm not against it. I'm just saying we need to be very careful with it, and I think we should keep it in a narrow highway, if we go that route.
Why aren't 7 of them not eligible? Is that,
Well, so for instance, I'm one.
Because of the age thing? Okay.
Correct.
Sorry
So-
to bring that up.
No,
I'm
that's,
right there with you.
I know I'm old. So yes. So it's based on, the reason I won't get it, won't hit it, because I won't have 15 years of service with the town
By
of
the
Duck
time you
by the time I turn 65 years old.
That's based if we stick, if the 44 employees we have now, or 42, are here in 2044.
Right. Yeah, so this would, I mean, so this reflects our 40 current employees, 38 of our current employees, so the Ms. Davis, who you met, and then Officer Cottrell, who you meet next month, are not included in this, but their predecessors were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Tony, and it should be just our plan, because if someone retires after that period of time and they can still eligible to work, they're going to go someplace where they get insurance, and all of a sudden they got the 2,400 coming from town of Duck. Just, spending money. I think it ought to have a limited highway. I agree.
Yeah, and I was really trying to structure this so it's not a liability that runs out of control, because I've seen where that can lead. I don't.
And just to clarify, if the eligibility for the rules were to change and say the retirement age went to 67, 68, the council would still have to come back and adjust. It's not going to automatically adjust to that.
So yeah, you'd have to change if the eligibility criteria for elders changed, and just as important, if the eligibility age for Medicare were to change.
Right.
So we need to, if that changed to 67, you would need to adjust your policy.
We
there.
would adjust the policy. The
Yeah.
council and that was sitting there would adjust it, just so I'm clear.
Yes.
So the levers that we have tonight are, allowing them to join in and the 2,400 with or without the policy is what you're proposing, and okay. Thank you.
So, if you, well, there's a lot of what ifs. Let's just say somewhere down the line, the town of Duck says, we're going to take over the roads and we're going to have a highway department. And then they also say, septics no longer work on the Outer Banks. We have to put a sewer system in. Now we've got a sewer department. And, we're up to 125 or 200 employees. This can start to multiply. But okay, that's, we can what if this thing to death. But I mean, in my mind, I would be more comfortable if we said something like, if anyone retires before the age of 65 and they're, they meet the eligibility requirements for that, they have the option of staying on the Duck plan and paying the full premium and receive a subsidy of $200 a month until they reach age 65. And then if they go somewhere else and they don't want it, they don't get the $200 premium.
And, some of those what ifs, so again, coming from where I came from, we didn't just take away that benefit from every employee that was working for that town. So it basically said if you were hired before X date, you were eligible. If you're hired after that date, you were not. So you can certainly sunset it.
Yeah.
So if you add a street department and a sewer department, neither of which we want, you could.
Not trying to be argumentative,
No,
but every
no,
situation,
not at all. No, it's
every situation I've been in, the born afters always catch up with the born befores.
It's just it's a recruitment tool. It goes in line with what the other things you're doing, because you read about, the vacancies, say at the county level, and they have quite a rich retirement plan for their employees. So it's just a matter of, but of course we're trying to accommodate that on the pay side, so it's just an idea of attracting capable people.
It's recruitment and retention. Yep.
I guess I just don't feel comfortable if someone leaves and doesn't participate in our plan and still gets $2,400. That just sounds like, to me, like it's an addition to the retirement plan, a supplemental retirement plan. I think if they stay in our plan and they want that plan to bridge them to Medicare, I think it would be generous on our part to give them $200 a month. And anybody who reaches those eligibility requirements is eligible for that. I mean, other council may not agree with that, but I mean, that's what I would be most amenable to.
No, I'm going to agree with Tony, and I think it should be limited. I mean, I agree. There's no check and balance once they get out of here. And the only check and balance would be if they're buying our insurance.
May I ask?
But it's still a nice.
Council Whitman, what are you thinking on this? What are you thinking? We're just having this situation. I'd just like to just kind of hear your thoughts, since we're going to make a decision tonight, so if you don't mind me asking.
So as he's formulating his response, what we're asking for tonight is direction. So you have a draft of the policy changes. We have no intention of you approving those tonight.
Right.
My plan was get your input, we'll do the rewrites, and then we'll bring that back to your meeting in July for a vote.
Okay.
I just feel that the town has been lucky to be able to keep the employees they have, and we should be able to give them something when they're going out recruiting to get them here and keep them. If you look at our town, other than the fire department, that seems to be the biggest turnover, and the police, I should have put in there. You know, your staff, I don't think in 10 years you've had more than 3 turnovers in the office area. You know, and I think the 2 public safety ones are the ones that we have to be concerned to keep a full crew on.
And we know that we're competing, and who we're competing against, and you know, when you look at what other towns are doing, and they're actually providing retiree health insurance. You know, so they're paying a portion of the premium, which then that's a moving, kind of a shifting liability. This was just our way of saying, can we do something that doesn't have that liability build over, continue to build over the course of the years.
Does Southern Shores pay 100% of their current employees' health insurance?
I don't have that data point in my head.
They must, right, if they're going to pay it if you retire, so they...
That's my question.
So they must pay 100%.
Chief Ackerman is nodding, yes, they do.
How many of these towns there pay 100%?
It looks like all of them based on what the data is.
I believe that they all do, but I don't want to say.
Yeah. How much do we
Sure.
pay of?
We pay 100% of the employee,
Oh, okay.
and then we pay 75% of the total if the
Right, if you
employee
got a
adds
family.
spouse. So, the employee pays a portion for spouse or for family.
So on that level, we're competitive with everybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think this is still a slippery slope, and, I mean, you look at municipalities today that can't, in fact, cover the liabilities, I mean, at all levels of government, and then you look at businesses, and they're backing off of this, and, in fact, they're forcing people into healthcare plans or HMOs, and some are now just eliminating them totally. I think it's a slippery slope. I'd like to see us really understand where we're going on this one, and really kind of have a narrow path, which is basically our insurance.
Meaning that you would approve of the idea of allowing them to be on the plan but not giving them the $2,400? I'm just trying to understand what.
No, I'm not against giving them the $200 a month, $2,400, but I think the only way we can control that is if, in fact, they stay on our plan.
Right.
And we can